coming here was joy. Back in the 90s, when I would go to a meeting about fisheries, I would make a point. I didn't want to be late. And if the meeting was 7 o'clock, I would come at 5 after or something. Everybody would be in the hall, so I could walk through the parking lot and read their bumper stickers and find out who they hated. Because everybody hated somebody. Yeah, I was going too deep in my hurts and feelings, but at any rate, I read in the paper that those people were going to be in the same room. Commercial fishermen, First Nations, commercial fishermen, non-First Nations, environmental groups, and NGOs, academics, they were actually mayors and city councilors. They were coming together instead of having different meetings in different halls and ignoring each other. And that warmed the cockles of my heart. I thought maybe it could be different. Now, and so I wanted to come here and say I'm sorry, and also to say, let's do it again. Only this time, let's do it together. There's only one, actually, part of all the system that isn't in the room, isn't there? The people who imposed it. You know, if you ever run for office, here's the thing you gotta know. Your only job is you gotta show up. I've been to 100 meetings in my life where I was the enemy, but you gotta show up. If you don't show up, that's basically saying it's a declaration of war. It's way more than screw you. It's you don't count, and I ain't gonna listen to your point of view. I win and you lose. The fact, I couldn't believe it. When I was sitting over there and somebody said Nanaimo wasn't in the room, that's a message bigger than I can make in 2 hours of talking. That's saying you folks are irrelevant. And I think it's kind of cool. It's kind of cool when somebody declares war on you, because then you get to fight back without having to apologize. I was sitting over there earlier in the day, and Rick Williams was sitting there, and he said something about, well, there's a window open or a door open, one of those movie metaphors, there's a window change or something. And I said, yeah, but in politics, the window isn't open for life. It's open for 15 minutes. And when they open the window or the door, you go through the door. It's an invitation, and it's not going to be like that very long. All this stuff about the meeting you had 2 years ago and the wonderful progress of the federal committee saying had to actually care about community and income levels, and saying it would be a good idea to investigate why it's so different on the west and the east coast of Canada. We're a country. How can it be that the fishermen, you have to have your boots on the boat in the east coast, and over here you can be Jimmy Patterson and just buy it? I should have started by saying who I am. My name's Corky Evans. I live. It says right here I'm supposed to say that. I live 3 mountain ranges away, and it's snowing, and that's dedication. But you can't have a Sabbath meeting where I live because I live on the river. The Spokane River used to have so much salmon you had to walk on them to go across it. And in 1943, the United States built the Grand Coulee Dam, and there isn't any salmon anymore in the whole Columbia system. That's where I live. Where the village of Salmo is, it used to be called Salmon, and after the coulee they dropped the N. And here's the thing you gotta know. If you kill all the fish, or you stop the fish from coming in 20 years, governments cease thinking about it. If you don't fight when the moment is, when it's your time to fight, it will pass you by. And I would argue this is the moment. Right now you have a provincial government who only has 3 seats east of Hope. And they're in coalition with another party that has no seats east of the GVRD. That means that the people who actually govern in this province only represent you. And they have no majority. And they can't lose a single seat. Now, I'm not bad about these people. They're my friends. I kissed Lana this morning. I slept in John Horgan's children's bedroom decades ago. I'm just talking, like, I've never fished for a living. I can't tell you how to fish. I kill trees and talk. That's all. But the thing I think I know something about is politics and how you make stuff happen. When there is a situation like today, where the government is about to have an election in a year and a half, and they need to win every single seat, that means the people in this room get to decide if they come back. That's a little bit of power. That's power you won't have next time. That's part of the window is open. And here's another thing I want to say. It's not in the notes, it just occurred to me. I got to tell you, in politics, decisions are not made based on information. That's actually kind of sad. But it isn't about facts and studies. You need facts and studies just to make sure you're not a damn fool. But in the room where the money gets given out and the decisions get made, it's about culture and votes. In the federal government, they sort of won, the Liberals. And Western Canada sort of went crazy, and they got this problem called Western alienation. And even if you're not alienated, you get to pretend to be, because that means you get to raise your hand and say, we have an issue you could solve, and we'd say thank you. That means that's power right now. It won't be power in half an hour, but it's power right now. You got power provincially because they need every single one of you. And you got power federally because they need to be able to pretend they did something here. I'd say you got to drive the truck right through the door. And here's another thing about politics. Damn, the notes are up there. Here's another thing. If you're sitting at that table making decisions, and this guy comes and says, do this because it will help me, you ignore that person. Self-interest is the death of your voice. If you want something for you, you got to get some other guy over here to say it's a good idea, who has no interest at all, couldn't make $1, and it's not even his territory. One time I wanted a ferry boat on Cooney Lake. I got a guy from Slocan Lake to ask for it. And the Minister of Highways said, okay. So what does that mean? Well, here's an example of what it means. In 1996, I was Puntledge, what is it? Puntland. And I was watching the seals eat the salmon. And I thought, oh, maybe we should shoot some seals. And I went back to Victoria and I got all my ministry. We should shoot some seals. And I was like, oh, God. They were working for me, so they didn't throw anything. But they weren't really working for me, so they didn't do anything. But now, Joy earlier said she's got a report that says extirpation of salmon or not is dependent on shooting some seals. So who is it that you got to get? Not that guy, because it's in his interest. You got to get Greenpeace, or you got to get the environment. That's how you do it. And there's some of those people in this room, thank God. You get the folks whose voice is believable because they're interested in the earth to say shoot some seals. Like if you guys actually understand this little mechanism, you can do anything you want. You just gotta learn how to get that woman to say it. Okay, maybe not you. I went to grade 12. So I can't really claim to have any data, but I want to sound a little bit intellectual here. In 1833, a British economist named Lloyd wrote a paper he called The Tragedy of the Commons. And he said, local people can't be trusted to manage the resources where they live. His example was grassland. He said, if all you folks got cows or sheep and you put them on a commons, sooner or later this woman's going to figure out that if she puts an extra cow on, she'll have a little bit more money in the winter. And that might last for a few years, and then this guy's going to see what she's doing, and then he's going to put a cow on. And then you guys it becomes pretty obvious there's more cows at harvest time over here. So everybody and then Mr. Lloyd said, you'll take the grassland, the commons, and waste it into weeds and then sand. And the way to protect the earth against the stupid people who live there is to put resources in the hands of a corporation or a government who doesn't live there, but has a financial interest. Because, of course, how capitalism works, the person with a financial interest will never degrade the resource. That would never happen. He's not messing with cows, he's messing with money. 1833, and then all the universities in England and London School of Economics and all, they adopted that as the Bible. And then in 1966, an environmentalist named Hardin wrote another book, which he also called The Tragedy of the Commons, and he said the earth, the planet, is the commons, and it's the selfishness of all of us overpopulating it that will kill the commons. You could have one kid or no kids, but you're going to have 3 or 4 because you're selfish. And from 1966 to this day, you've got the environmentalists and the economists on the same side. They have finally agreed on something, and that is that you can't manage the commons. And DFOs, people, every one of them went to university and got taught that. On the East Coast or somewhere, they fought to get some control back, but only because they fought to get it back. I was in Newfoundland, in St. John's in 1992. Every ship in it, they were piled, you couldn't even park on the docks. They were tied to one another, 6 out. 30,000 people without a job. And then they fought back and changed the rules. But right now, Midlands people were essentially quoting the tragedy of the commons and saying the rules up until 1996 weren't going to work anymore. The DFO people were saying, oh, the salmon are declining and it's because the fishermen are greedy. And if you want to protect the commons, take it out of their hands or put it into Jimmy Patterson's hands and the investors. Am I shouting at you? I'm sorry. Beg your pardon? Yeah, watching my language too. Okay, here's the good news. Here's some good news anyway. Where I live, in 1964, the Canadian government, Lester Pearson and Lyndon Johnson and W.A.C. Bennett, they all got together at the Peace March in Blaine, Washington, signed a piece of paper and said that Canada it was called the Columbia River Treaty, said Canada would store 60 million acre feet of our water for the Army Corps of Engineers to call whenever they wanted it. And where I live, now instead of lakes we have bathtubs that rise up when they want to store water and drop when they want to let it down. And after 30 years of living with that catastrophe, the people got angry. And this is important to understand who got angry. Farmers were angry, hunters were angry, fishermen were angry, the people who lost their land or their whole village or their cemetery and their water, they were all angry. But the voice that the province heard say this sucks was municipal government and First Nations government making coalition and saying this ends. And then the province said, okay, what do you want? And said, oh, well, we'll give you a few $1 million, you can have a party or something. And the people said, no, I don't want a party, I want a piece of the river. And we negotiated for the water licenses, the excess water licenses all over the river. And in the last 25 years, the Columbia Basin Trust, a group of people made up of local people, municipal First Nations people, have built 3 power plants and now earn above cost and debt $50 million a year, and they pass it out in the community. Say again? You coming? You're welcome. I'll show you some nice property. Here's another good piece of news. 1998. Remember we had the horrible years of the land use plans in British Columbia? Try being an MLA when all the roads are blockaded and they hang you an effigy on your own property. Anyway, when we finished the land use plans, it's especially bad to be a logger and an MLA. Oh my God. It's like, never mind. Anyway, when they finished the land use plans, some of the maps said this watershed is called sensitive. Where this land behind the people's house is sensitive, or around this area that might burn around the municipality is sensitive. Well, the logging companies in British Columbia, of course, these are the people I used to work for, they're just plain stupid. And they don't know how to log sensitive land. That's been irrelevant. 100 years of just going to work wherever you want and doing whatever you want. The sensitive business was going to cost them money, so they didn't want that. And the Forest Service, they all went to UBC and got taught about, never mind. Anyway, they didn't know what to do about it. The municipalities raised their hand and said, we want it. Yeah, it's sensitive, we'll manage it, give it to us. And the law said, okay, you can have a community forest. That was 1996 or 8 or something like that. And everybody thought, well, this will probably never work. They'll just lock it up and call it a park. But 54 municipalities, more than half of the First Nations or partnerships with First Nations have applied for community forests in British Columbia, and they're making $8 million a year, and they're passing it around in their communities, and they're logging that land, and they're logging it in such a lovely way that everybody celebrates. Now, people who used to go to jail opposed to logging are now on the boards actually designing roads. What does that mean? It means the commons has been made to work both with water in the Columbia River and with forest land. And then, I think around 2003, I forget, a woman named Eleanor, I don't know, Eleanor Ostrom wrote a book about the tragedy of the commons because she said, I think this is wrong. I think that what this guy said in 1833 might be false. And she went all over the world. She studied grasslands and fisheries and forest land and even oil fields. And she went to Africa, she went to the United States, she actually was in the United States, went to Maine, went to Europe, went to Japan, and she studied what worked and what didn't work, and she wrote a book and with 8 principles of what makes the commons work. And the Nobel Committee gave this woman, the first woman in history, to get the Nobel Prize for Economics for proving the lie that the DFOs of the world have been imposing upon us for 170 years. So now you got the academic proof that you could manage the commons.
Come on.
You could. Just work a little.
I'm ready.
The academic proof, and you got the Columbia Basin Trust making $50 million a year, and community forest making $8 million. It's happening in British Columbia. There is no longer an academic or a political excuse for taking control away from the people who actually live there and giving it to people who live thousands of kilometers away. This is what I think. I think, you know, we can go to school, we can learn a bunch of stuff, or we can go do some kind of work and learn a bunch of stuff. But in our hearts, there's a visceral thing about place, about where you live, maybe about where your mom and dad live, and the hills and the rivers and the ocean. The sense of place in a human being, maybe it's love. It's certainly responsibility. It's like I go log somewhere 4 hours away from home because I got a job and I'm logging. I one time was clear cutting Lady Smith's watershed. I was 22 years, I didn't know anybody lived down there. We were fallen trees in the lake so they didn't break. Because I didn't live there. Nobody in the Crummies lived there. And then there's something about logging behind your house. Now the water matters, and the view matters. And the fact that there might be some trees there for your children matters. And it matters in a way that you don't learn at school. DFO not only doesn't come to the meeting, I would argue they couldn't even understand the issue. Because they're managing from away, out of the side of their head. with systems and policies they learned at UBC or somewhere. And if we give it, if we don't, no, give is absolutely the wrong word. Nobody's gonna give you anything. If you take it back, you manage it from your guts as well as from your brain. Because we all have a right to make a living. But along with it, ought to go the responsibility to say it, to make sure it stays there. And this means where the NGOs and First Nations and Union and everybody's in the same room. If you can hang together long enough to say it together, I think the window's open, you can take it back. When you communicate, you gotta communicate to people who don't know anything. That means you don't say any words that don't make sense to somebody that's 13 years old. No arguments over this kind of quota or that kind of quota, or nothing about the specific thing. I'm not a really stupid person, but when I was the Minister of Fisheries, I didn't understand anything you guys were saying. Because it's complicated. I mean, you get up and tell me you're 82 years old, and then say, like I didn't live those years in that place on that boat. You want to make change, you got to speak in pictures. Okay, I'm going to wrap this up because somebody's going to tell me to stop. Step one, you want to make change, do it when there's a chance. And I would say that's now, politically. And I'll come back in a few years and tell you it's over, because I ain't lying to you. I think it's open a little bit. And I haven't seen it that way for a really long time. I made the Ministry of Fish, a standalone Ministry of Fish, where Gal got elected to die. Took him 10 minutes. Probably even hadn't called the legislature yet, just killed him. And that's the way it'll be again, when it changes again. So the first step is you got to do it when the window opens a little bit, and that's right now. Second step, you got to figure out whose voice the people will listen to. That's not him. You got to say his message, which means you got to care about his issue, which means you got to go talk to him, and then say it, and say, and I'm not him. I will get it. What we learned with the Columbia Basin Trust and with Community Forest is that the level of government the provincial government believed was First Nations government and municipal government, regional districts. I don't know why that is. I was a regional director once, they never believed me, but it's just a fact. When you leave this room, I'm listening to Gill letters, hate the Sainers, and it's on and on and on. When you leave this room, you go home and you say to people, okay, yeah, that's right. He's dead wrong. I agree with you, he's dead wrong. But for the next 5 years, we're going to pretend like we agree with him. Because if we shatter this group, we're dead. You go home and argue about him, you're doing DFO's work. That's what they want you to do. I'm sorry. You can hear, but do you understand? Okay, I'm gonna say I'm done. I think it's so. I came to say I'm sorry, and you sat there and listened, and nobody left, and it warms the cockles of my heart.